Horvat and Mathew Barzal are the Islanders' most dynamic offensive players, at least among forwards. But can they be even better in their second full season together? We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. With the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs in our rearview mirror, there are just fewer games than we want. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That's hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll discuss it here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Plenty to discuss on today's show, but we're going to lead off with the dynamic duo of the Islanders forwards, Horvat and Mathew Barzal. I mean, let's face it, these are the two players that make the Islanders' first line go. In fact, the third player on that top line last year was really never steady. You had Bo and Barzy, and then sometimes you had Casey Cizikas, Anders Lee, Pierre Engvall. Occasionally you had Simon Holmstrom or Hudson Fasching. You had a lot of people. Brock Nelson moving briefly for a couple of weeks from center to the wing just to get the offense jumping. So it's Bo and Barzy, and then, well, now this year it's probably going to be Bo, Barzy, and Anthony Duclair being the new trio. And, you know, part of the question becomes, will the addition of Duclair help Bo and Barzy? But I think another part of it is this. This is now the second full season that this duo has been together. And we did see an increase in chemistry last season as opposed to the partial season that we saw the year before. Now, part of that is due to injuries. They were together for only a couple of weeks. Then Barzal gets hurt, and he comes back for the playoffs, but he really isn't playing at, he's not 100% healthy, and it just isn't going to get, he's not at 100%. So now you have a full season, and you look at the numbers. Mathew Barzal had his best season statistically since his rookie year. Here he was being a point-a-game player for the first time in a long time, since that rookie campaign where he scored 85 points in 82 games. Last year, 80 points in 80 games, a career high, 23 goals. You add 57 assists, and all of a sudden, there's a little something going on. Now, part of the reason the 33 goals rather, and 35 assists that you got from Bo Horvat. So realistically, that's the second highest goal total of Horvat's career. The previous year where he had 38 in 79 combined games with Vancouver and the Islanders. That was first. But again, seeing the chemistry that these two guys had with each other, the way that Bo Horvat, getting along the bumper and shooting from there and from other areas down low or even a little further back, he gets more time and space to maneuver when Bo has Barzy carrying the puck, because Mathew Barzal automatically gets more respect from opposing teams because of his speed and his ability to change directions. And, you look at his shots on goal last year with Bo Horvat on the team, and a little bit of a change in mentality for the better. No, Mathew Barzal is still not a shoot-first kind of a guy, but last year he had 240 shots on goal in 80 games. Keep in mind that his shooting percentage of 9.6 was the second lowest of his NHL career. But the fact is, every other season, he never had more than 179 shots on goal. That is a 41 shots on goal increase for Mathew Barzal last season over his previous career high. That change, and part of it, I think, is due to Bo Horvat's presence. Part of it may also be because of Patrick Roy's presence. I think all of that was a positive. And you know who else had a lot more shots, a career high in shots last year? Bo Horvat, 248 shots on goal. Now, the year before, he had 229. He also had a season in 2018, 2019 with 227. But again, what we saw was these two players sort of bringing out the best in each other, and that was without a solid third line mate who would really stir the pot and give them another offensive weapon who could really get the job done. Yeah, we saw that when Brock Nelson joined, even though Brock wasn't playing his natural position. But what was that, 10 days, 2 weeks? So what, 7 or 8 games, 10 games tops? This is a big difference. Now, you're adding Anthony Duclair to the mix. What is that going to mean? Well, among other things, you now have a third guy who can easily score 20, 25, maybe even under the best of circumstances, approach or meet 30 goals in a season, and playing on a line, assuming that Patrick Roy keeps them together as a line with Bo and Barzy. Duclair could benefit from playing with that duo. And the Bo and Barzy thing, they've already got great chemistry. If they can develop more chemistry with Anthony Duclair, again, I think you're taking things to another level. And then, the question is this. Yeah, I think Bo and Barzy will have even more chemistry in their second full season together. I think Anthony Duclair adds a little speed to the lineup and another shooter to the lineup, which will mean that opposing defenses still have to be, they have to be respectful of 3 forwards on that line more than just 2. Again, these are all things that could add up to more. The other key, though, is going to be obviously, and I think this is a given, everybody staying healthy. Barzal played in 80 games last year, Horvat in 81. You want to surpass last year's production, you've got to be able to play at least 75 games, 80 games over the course of the year and stay healthy and be able to play at your best. But overall, I think it is not unrealistic to think that Bo Horvat and Mathew Barzal, the 2 most dynamic offensive forwards in the lineup, can be even better, especially with the addition of Anthony Duclair. And the possibilities, the potential is definitely there. The question becomes, will all three of them realize that potential? Will there be chemistry? Chemistry is a funny thing. You can say that it could happen or should happen, but until you get those guys out there together on the ice, you don't know how well they're going to play together, how their personalities are going to mesh, how their games are going to mesh exactly. The potential is there for the Islanders' top line to be even more productive this year than it was last year. That is important, and we'll see whether or not that can happen. It's, again, for a team that finished last season 22nd in the NHL in goals scored, can the addition of Anthony Duclair and the addition of Maxim Tsiplakov and another year of chemistry between Bo and Barzy get this unit, let's even say to the middle of the pack, get me from 22nd to 16th? I think it's possible. A lot of variables, a lot of things it'll depend on, but I think the potential is definitely there. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk about the possible contract extension for Kyle Palmieri. He is one of two big Islander top six forwards who their deal expires at the end of the upcoming season. Plus, we'll talk about a couple of players who could help the Islanders' power play. And yes, for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a Slovakian defenseman who spent 3 seasons with the Islanders in the mid-2000 teens. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But with the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs far in our rearview mirror, there are just fewer games. And look, I want more games. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And look, throughout the summer, you got Mets, Yankees, all your Major League Baseball. You've got preseason football going. You've got football futures, hockey futures. Check out all the latest odds at FanDuel. Head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Lou Lamoriello spoke to the New York Post and their Islanders beat reporter and Ethan Sears, and he published this on Friday, and, one of the things he was asked about, obviously, was, again, Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck, and it looks more and more like they are not going to be back, although, again, Lou wouldn't close the door on it. But one of the other things that he was asked about was whether or not the Islanders are going to re-sign Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Now, they're eligible to sign extensions as of this past month, July 1st. So we're now about 5.5, 6 weeks into that eligibility, and neither player has re-signed. And look, Lou basically said we've signed people during their last contract year and post last year. There's nothing in cement. I'm not saying something couldn't happen. It's not something will happen. So Lou basically, and in the past, in recent interviews, he's also said that's not his top priority right now. So, what do you do with Kyle Palmieri? And in my mind, the move that you make with Kyle Palmieri, the smartest thing you can do is wait it out a little bit. And here's why. Last year, Palmieri had a solid season. 30 goals for the first time in a long time, 54 points, 10 power play goals, tied him with Bo Horvat for the team lead, 8 game-winning goals. That led the team. He had a really good year, played in all 82 games for the first time in quite some time, and you got to give credit to Palms. And, one of the reasons, is the ability to stay healthy. And, he had 218 shots on goal, the most he's had since 2018, 2019. He really did add something to the Islanders. And look, Palms, like many goal scorers, tends to be a streaky guy. But here's the thing about Kyle Palmieri. He's 33 years old. He'll turn 34 in February. I think with Palmieri, first of all, if you're going to sign a 34-year-old player to an extension, it's got to be 3 years or less. You can't start putting the 5, 6, 7-year extension on a guy in Kyle Palmieri's situation. It just doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, we've seen Lou Lamoriello make this mistake a little too often as far as signing players with, to longer contracts than he should, with no trade clauses and or modified no trade clauses. And you end up with a difficult guy to move, or a guy who doesn't have as much incentive to play well because he knows he's got 6.5 years left on his deal. And let's face it, it's human nature. The hunger gets reduced a little bit when your contract is locked up and you're getting paid regardless of how you do. If the Islanders are out of the playoff picture come trade deadline, if they're really having a bad year, and I don't think they're going to be that bad, but if that happens, by all means, Kyle Palmieri could be a great asset for a contending team. And if the Islanders are just far on the outside looking in my mind, you trade Kyle Palmieri at the deadline. If the Islanders are still in it and Palms is producing and playing well, that's when you could sit there and say, you know what, we could use Kyle Palmieri. He's still producing. He gives us a solid second line guy. He's a good power play guy, played on our top power play unit. And we're going to keep him around. You sign him to a 3-year extension. And, maybe you give him a no trade clause for 1 year. But again, don't tie your hands. I think that's one of the mistakes that Lou Lamoriello just keeps making. And I know he's trying to use the longer term and the no trade clauses to entice players to stay, but you can't do that. And the other thing is this. To me, Kyle Palmieri, I like the guy. I really think he's been a solid Islander since he was acquired. He's got a $5 million cap hit. If you extend him, the cap hit cannot be higher than $5 million. In fact, I think it should go, he may not sign for less, but if that's the case, you can let him go. Because unless it's like a 1-year deal, I just don't understand why you would raise his salary as he gets older and the expectations for what he's likely to accomplish continue to go down. And, Palm's part of his game is speed. And, if that speed starts to fall off and he's not as productive as a result, again, you don't want to be overpaying and over-terming it. So would I sign Kyle Palmieri to an extension? Yes. But $5 million would be my ceiling. 3 years would be my ceiling, and I'd prefer 2, to be honest with you, but I'd give him that 3rd if it helps entice him to stay. No trade clause or modified no trade clause, maybe for the first year only. I would start off in the negotiation saying we don't want to give you one, but I'd give him 1 year of a modified or full no trade clause at most. And that's contingent on Palmieri having a good year and the Islanders still being in the playoff hunt. If they're not, or if Palms is slumping, you can always deal him at the trade deadline. You know, Lou Lamoriello is famous for saying, if you have time, use it. In this instance, I think that's the wise thing to do. Signing Palmieri right now just doesn't make sense, where so many things can happen between now and then. You're talking about a guy who's getting into his mid-30s, but keeping those options open, I would be fine if you get to the trade deadline and you keep him on the roster and he's having another good season and he wants to stay. That, to me, would be a good time to start talking extension with the parameters I spoke about. But we'll see what Lou Lamoriello and Kyle Palmieri want to do. It's going to be an interesting situation to watch as the upcoming year unfolds. All right, the Islanders' power play. It's been an issue for this team for a while. They were a little better last year, although uneven, but we'll see. Couple of players new to the roster who might be able to help it. We're going to talk about that, plus our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So for the Islanders, you know, the power play last year, certainly better than the year before, a 20.3% conversion rate, 19th in the league. You know, a little below average. If 16th is dead center, you finish 19th. That's not terrible, but a little below average. I can live with that. That's okay. But, you know, you want to be better, especially when your penalty kill was dead last and historically bad last year. And, you know, the Islanders are a better team 5-on-5 than they are in special teams. Special teams are important, especially when you get to the playoffs. So as far as I'm concerned, the Islanders, you know, getting a little bit better on the power play would be very important. And they added 2 players who I think can definitely help in that area. The first one we spoke about in our first segment, that's Anthony Duclair. Whether he plays on the top power play unit or the second power play unit, doesn't matter. Duclair is a guy who could play either wing, so he gives you a little bit more flexibility. He has speed, which means he can create even more time and space when you have only 4 defensive players plus a goalie on the ice against you. There are a lot of things that, you know, kind of work in Anthony Duclair's favor. And let's face it, Duclair has a history of producing on the power play. Last year, Duclair basically scored 5 power play goals with San Jose. He had 9 power play goals with Florida in 2021-2022, and 7 power play goals total in 2018, 2019. If he can get 7, 8, 10 power play goals with the Islanders, if he can be productive in that role, I think that would be a big help for this team. And it doesn't even have to be Duclair himself scoring the goals. The fact that he can give you time and space and make things better for other players, that is also a help. And then the other guy, to me, and it may take a little more time, but that's Maxim Siplakov. He had 6 power play goals, and by the way, 4 shorthanded goals last year playing in the KHL. So 10 of his 31 goals came on special teams. Now, again, the rink is narrower. The game is more physical. It's a different style of play. I am not saying that Maxim Siplakov is going to come in here and set the world on fire on the power play. But he certainly has the size at 6'3", 190 pounds, and the tools to be able to go out there and give you some more juice on the power play. And, you know, he could get down low and be a guy like Anders Lee was in his prime, where he could screen players and get tips and rebounds. He could shoot from different places on the ice. It may be that, you know, the first half of the season, he struggles a little bit as he adjusts to life in North America and playing in the NHL as opposed to the KHL. But you know what? Because there's more time and space, the power play may be where his impact is first felt. So we have to see how he does in training camp, how he does early in the season. But to me, those two new additions, and let's face it, those are the two new additions on this team. Those two guys could really help improve the power play. And you get the power play from 19th to 14th or 12th. If you could even maybe sneak closer to the top 10. Again, it makes a difference in the offensive productivity, and especially if they make the playoffs. You get into the playoffs, those power play situations become even more important. So I think between Duclair and Siplakov, you got two guys who can give you A, different skill sets on the power play, and B, more talent on the power play, more speed, more size, good shooters. All of these things are important, and the Islanders need more of them. Let's see how these two guys fit in with the man advantage. All right, time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Sunday was the 48th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Lubomir Visnovsky. And, you know, Viz essentially closed out his NHL career with the Islanders. He was a fourth-round pick of the Kings back in 2000. Made his NHL debut that year for the Kings in 2000, 2001. A pretty good offensive defenseman, had 67 points with the Kings in 05, 06, 68 points with the Anaheim Ducks in 2010, 2011, 5'10", almost 200 pounds. Solid offensive defenseman. By the time he reached the Island in 2012, 2013, he was not as productive offensively, but he could still flash that offensive skill. 883 career NHL games, 128 goals, 495 points, and 373 penalty minutes, and 8 assists in 28 playoff games. 10 of those games and 4 of those assists coming with the Islanders, and there are Visnovsky's career numbers. One of his better games with the Isles, how about December 13th, 2014, Islanders hosting the Blackhawks at the Nassau Coliseum. The Blackhawks have Scott Darling in goal, Yaro Halak, the goalie for the New York Islanders. After a scoreless first period, Daniel Carcillo and Cal Clutterbuck trade goals were 1-1 after 2. In the third period, the Blackhawks go ahead on a goal by Patrick Kane, but Kyle Oposo answers for the Islanders. And then, with a little less than 9 minutes left in regulation, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Lubomir Visnovsky, scores his second goal of the season. It turns out to be the game winner. Ryan Strome and Matt Martin with the assist. Islanders hold on for a 3-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. 23 saves for Halak. Visnovsky scoring on one of his 2 shots. It was the game winner. He was on the ice for 20 minutes and 38 seconds. So Lubomir Visnovsky, 3 seasons on the island. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers will be back midweek, Wednesday, with our next episode, talking about more of the Islanders' offseason news and happenings. And again, we will start evaluating draft picks. So make sure you join us for that. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.